And I also think people are really comfortable in their mess. The people, when I always have a free call with people at first because I don't take everybody as a client. I only take people that are ready to move. I need people who are ready and willing to say, enough is enough.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like this anymore. And then we soar. Like, we have fun. We have a lot of fun. And because stress is a downer subject, so I use a lot of humor. And, a lot of the stuff we trigger over is hilarious. Otherwise, we cry, right?
Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall, where we throw ideas, see what sticks, and nurture those that do. I'm your host, Armando Leduc, an actor, entrepreneur, and coach, giving you insights that light up your world. We're here to explore the realms of business, marketing, and life, serving up a shot of inspiration with every episode. Ready to make ideas stick and grow them into something great? Let's dive in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, back with another one. Elle Ingalls in the house.
Nice to meet you again.
Thanks for being here.
It's great to see you again.
Pressure-free living. So we met at a summit called the Visionary Summit. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you told me in one of your keynotes was that if you don't calm your nervous system within, I think it was 10 minutes or 10 seconds. 10 seconds, that's it. I knew it was 10. 10 seconds, that you're going to be past that point, and that is the time period. Well, you can discuss a little bit more about that. But I always remember that, like, okay, when I'm in that situation, that I have to calm down as quickly as possible.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's something that I feel like I've taken. I'm not perfect at it, but I do think about it often. It was one of those things that just kind of sticks with you. And I was like, man,
that's so cool that it does.
Yeah.
That's so great. As a speaker, what do people actually take away? They don't even remember the speaker's name,
Yeah. Sometimes you're right. Sometimes they don't. I remember your name though. But that really stuck out to me in terms of, like, calming the nervous system down within 10 seconds because you're doing irreparable damage. And so, you know what? That's a good place to start. So talk about that. Talk about, how people are, really short-circuiting themselves and, their nervous system and all that.
Yeah, because it's most of us don't even know we're doing it. Like, I thought I was a pretty calm, chill professional my whole career. I was really great in the heat of the moment, like on stage. So I'm a performer, I'm a classical violinist, I'm a conductor, like great on stage. But it's all those little annoying things in my day, or people not finishing their sentences fast enough for me. East Coast girl, in the Midwest. So I just want things to, be a certain way. And so it was all of that was actually causing me to trigger my stress response. And I had no idea. So, I kind of dug in because my sons wanted me to coach their baseball team in my mental toughness tips that I teach my violin students to their baseball team. Now that's pretty crazy. I thought, oh, you want me in the dugout? And they nodded yes. We actually want you in the dugout. So when I took my ideas to the head coach, he actually hired me to be his private coach. He was a financial advisor for Chase. And he said, it's 2010. He goes, it is such a tough time for us right now. He goes, I really want to work with you privately. So he became my first client. My department chair at the college found out what I was doing. She became my second client. And I had this whole baseball team to start delving into, what is the stress response and how can we stop the release of these stress hormones that go out and really mess us up? So, people will be great in practice. Athletes will be great in practice. And then they go to the game and they're overthrowing, or they're just not on target. They're just missing things. They're not hitting the way they do in practice. And so we really cleaned that up with that team in a lot of ways. And my son, Hugh, who he just, he said, oh, this is incredible. So he and I really dug in, started using it on ourselves. And so I've been an executive of a symphony for years. I founded a music school with my husband. We've done a lot of stuff. And like I said, I thought I was this cool professional. But I started using my own method on myself. And some really key things happened. My hands, my right hand in particular, which is my bow hand, got covered in eczema my first big violin competition when I was 13. Cracked, bleeding knuckles for 35 years. And in 8 weeks of using my method, my skin completely healed. Like a miracle, really. Stress acne, I would get on my cheeks sometimes, completely gone. My breast tissues changed. I had dense fibrous tissues, which is a precursor to breast cancer. My mom died of breast cancer. In fact, I'm the age she was the first time she got it. It's this year. And I'm like, I think I may have given myself some quality years, So a lot of crazy things happened to me personally. And then as I'm coaching these clients, I thought initially I was just helping people perform better. But all of a sudden they're getting miracle cures. Like, I don't have this anymore. I told you before we came on here, I've actually coached kids as young as 10. Mm-hmm. I had this really smart little soccer player, mathematician. And when he came to me, he goes, I'm doing the intake, and he says, well, I have terrible allergies. I have to take allergy medicine every single day. And I'm like, wow, really? And at the end of our work together, end of my program, I pull out, what did we talk about in the beginning? How are you doing? I go, so how are your allergies? And he looks at his mother, and he smiles big, and he goes, I don't have any allergies anymore. I go, like, none? He goes, none.
That's so wild.
So think of all the things people are suffering from, like little tiny chronic things. Anything that's going through time. Could be allergies, asthma issues, stress-induced asthma, could be gut issues, of course, ulcers. We think about stress in the heart, but it's really affecting so many of your body processes, including your digestion. We hear everybody talking about gut health today, and it's like, listen, the main reason your gut is messed up is because you're releasing the fight or flight stress hormones. If you stop doing that, everything starts to work better. It's really pretty amazing. So that was 2010. Now I've coached over, 300 people privately in my programs and thousands of people in groups around the country and overseas too. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really fun.
So the people that you help, let's talk about, let's talk about the types of people that you help, because I know you deal with a lot of high performers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In fact, I think that's the common denominator of no matter what their age and what their profession or what they do, they're high achievers, they're high performers. They want to do life well, and they don't like it when people tell them to slow down or stop or take time off. Like, they don't want to do that.
So driven people. Driven
people. Yep. So if people are telling you, wow, your stress seems to be like, you need to take some time off, getting those kinds of comments from someone, that's who I help. Like, you don't need to take time off. That's actually a myth. And you don't need to slow down. That's a myth too. All you need to do is learn to stop triggering the stress response. You stop doing that, and you can actually take on more challenges and do more. And that's what my clients do. It's so surprising to me what my clients end up doing once they're cleaned up on the inside. It's like we're cleaning ourselves up on the inside.
And so talk to me about some of the problems that you see them have.
Yeah.
And some of the pain they have.
I had one person come to me. You'll see her on my website. If you check out my website, it was incredible what happened. She took herself to the hospital one day, left work because she thought she was having a massive heart attack, and she was having a panic attack. But that meant she couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. Like, if it was a heart attack, you'd know, right? But it's a panic attack. Well, how am I going to prevent that? So people who have panic attacks, that's really hard. So she actually went into a whole mental loop. She tried everything. She tried yoga, meditation, medication, like everything. And it wasn't until she found out about me from a colleague, and it was a matter, actually after the very first session, she goes, this is not only going to help me at work, this is going to change my family for generations, because she's no longer overreacting. And so how now does that serve her children and her husband? Like, totally different.
So anger management.
Yeah, in a way. Anger management, anxiety management.
Yeah.
And she said, I was secretly stressed. On the exterior, people thought I was a totally calm professional. But inside, it was nasty. And that's why I say, we need to lift up the hood, and we need to acknowledge what's really going down. So some other problems people have is like, I'll have people in the C-suite or professionals who will say, I get this feedback that I don't notice people very well. Like, I don't see them or hear them or affirm them very well. And what do you hear on the other side from the lower? They're like, I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. I don't feel affirmed. Well, if your boss is stressed out, they can't see you. They can't hear you. Everything can feel like a threat, including you coming to talk to them about some situation. So that's why people react, and they get feedback that their behavior is not very helpful. So sometimes I'm getting executives or professionals that are having those kind of issues. Anytime people are feeling like I feel like I've got so much more, but I don't know how to access it. So the idea of underperformance, like I should be making more money, or I should be getting more gigs, or whatever the thing is, like any sense of underperformance, sports as well. I've helped people like in unbelievable ways that I just can't even believe what's happening to them, because they unlock and they shift into the ability to really have their true gifts and talents come out. And I think that's really what I do for people. And that is life-changing.
I love that. There's so many, and I talk to my clients about that. I wouldn't say I'm a coach as much as I would be more consultative. We have a consultative approach to what we do, right?
Yeah,
because of putting people on camera and them having imposter syndrome and anxiety about filming and anxiety about all of these things. We don't necessarily go, as far as you do in terms of mindset, but it really is a mindset that once they believe and they understand that they're worthy and they understand that their perspective matters, and they can really not necessarily, get rid of imposter syndrome. I don't think you can, but you can limit the voice. Right?
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is really interesting. I use the word congruent, like it's the inside and outside matching. Because when it's not matching, like you're faking it to make it, when it's not matching, you can easily trigger the stress response because you feel like you're going to be found out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a stress that's like really insidious. It's like keeping you up at night kind of things, like, are they going to find out how early I am? Like, I didn't get that project done, or whatever the thing is, right? Mm-hmm. So I use that word congruent, like let's get to the point where you feel the way you feel. People say, oh, I want to feel authentic. The stress response messes that up. In fact, let's get to this, with females, they'll say, oh, she's being assertive. No, she's being aggressive. You hear that all the time, right? If a woman has triggered the stress response, she probably is being aggressive. Same thing with a guy. If he's triggered the stress response, he is kind of arguing and fighting and pushing his agenda, right? So where's the real you? I'll have clients say to me, Elle, you help me find the real me underneath all the stressed parts of me. Like, what's the real you? What's the congruent inside-outside's matching? You're not faking it to make it. This is the real you. The first person that said to me was a 17-year-old who had a lot of test anxiety, a lot of social anxiety. Most of us have social anxiety. We met at the Visionary Forum, and you meet somebody for the first time, and 5 seconds later, you forget their name. It's like, what the heck? We're not stupid people. What the heck's going on here? What's going on is before we even got to the event, we probably triggered fight or flight. Either felt we were running late, or, something ticked us off. It doesn't matter what it is. Or we got some call from our business. So when we got into the room, we weren't present, because in fight or flight, you're not present. You're just looking for the threat. So this hippocampus back here in your cortex, it's shut down somewhat. You're not making good decisions, you can't remember, and you lack willpower. So you don't have the faculties you need to actually remember Jack's name. It's just one syllable, right?
Right.
I did a test. This is kind of cool. So do you remember meeting Marcia?
Yes. Okay.
Marcia hired me to work with her entire company. They were all flying in for their leadership summit, and I coached them. It's supposed to be a 90-minute, but it ended up being 2.5 hours because I got there early and they were done their first segment. She goes, can you give us 2.5? And I'm like, sure. Most people would trigger in that situation, by the way, to have to do a longer speech than what they planned. Well, about 2 hours before the event, I was back at my hotel room. They have a beautiful website, and they have about 35 of their 54 employees, like their pictures and their names are on there. So I thought I'd do a test myself, like, how many of these people could I actually memorize in 45 minutes, an hour or so? So I looked at their pictures, I looked at their names, and they were alphabetical by first name, which is pretty cool. So I got into the room, and that's when Marcia says, can you go an hour? I'm like, okay. Had I triggered, I would not have been able to do this. So I start the event, start my talk, and I have them do a breakout one-on-one, and then we come back together, and I said, okay, so who'd like to share? And I looked at this guy, kind of leaned forward. I go, Jonathan, how about you? And he goes, well, like, how do you know my name? I go, oh, you're not quite ready, but how about you over here, Hannah? Like, it's just like, how do you know
Wow.
Here's what happened. I found out at the cocktail hour, Amanda, whose name I knew, came up to me and she goes, Elle, you don't understand. We don't know each other's names. because a lot of them are out of, they're not in Indianapolis, they're flying in. She goes, we don't even know each other. And you came in and you took the time to actually learn our names. But not only that, I remembered the names. 2010, prior to 2010, I never would have been able to do that. So I messed up about 5 people. Like as I looked around the room, I'm like, oh, those 5 I really don't know. And they had like changed their hair color or cut their hair, or they had a beard and didn't have a beard. Like there was something off, and I didn't get them.
Right.
But about 30 of those people I actually knew, and so I tested myself because I'm like, is this real? Is this pressure-free stuff real? Can I stay pressure-free the night before traveling to the event, the day of? Because for a female, when you trigger fight or flight, it can mess you up for up to 24 hours. You can be in the cycle of stress hormone release until they're all dissipated out. It takes up to 24 hours. But for males, it's up to 9 hours. Kind of interesting difference there. And it explains a few things, right?
Yeah.
It's funny,
Yes,
but,
it
sometimes if this is the biggest takeaway, sometimes from my talks, is like 9 hours, 24 hours. Okay, that explains why she's still really mad at me. And I've even forgotten what the argument is. It's because there's this huge gender difference between how the stress hormones work in us.
Write that down.
Yeah.
Write that down. Remember that. Yeah.
My boys are like, they never want to see me trigger again, because I still remember this night. My son asked me if he could use my car to take some girl on a date. And I was like, no, take the van. You can't have my car. I was definitely stressed, because if I wasn't, I would have thrown in the keys. Have a great time. But when we're stressed, everything can feel like a threat, and we're going to pull back and we're going to hold on to our stuff. Like, don't touch my coffee mug, We just want to be protective. So our behavior changes. And just flip that and think about what things are like in a family or in a work situation if you're not so threatened or protective.
Let me ask you about this.
Yeah.
So I'm reading this book, or I just finished. It's The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. Have you read it?
I haven't read that book, no.
Fantastic.
But I know Stephen Covey.
Really, really good. But it really talked about how leaders are creating environments of trust, accountability. So have you seen where someone like that, this super driven, 120 miles an hour, isn't paying attention? Have you seen him or her being able to reconcile maybe years of this environment and turn it around?
Yeah. I had a C-level exec who how should I put it? Impatient would be a good word. Very driven. Actually came to me because they wanted to land a TED Talk really well and do some other stuff. But the byproduct of our work, they were able to really see, hear, and affirm. So their meetings changed. Now, instead of like forcing agenda, they were actually hearing the people around the table and coming up with some really amazing consensus and moving projects so much more faster forward, because getting everybody on the same page was so much easier when they weren't in fight or flight. And so about 4 months into our work together, this person got a huge promotion. And when she told me that, one of their colleagues came up to her and he said, you should have gotten this promotion 7 years ago. And she looked at him and said, no, I was missing something very critical. And it was this piece that now, come in, you're not triggered. Most people enter a meeting, especially if they're leading it, and they've triggered the stress response. So they're not even hearing what their people are telling them.
Yeah.
And so that was huge. That changed everything. And that person has sent me so many other people who come work with me, because it was just such a huge beneficial change, not just for the person, for the team, for the company, for the customers.
Yeah.
For what's happening now.
So how does one stop the fight or flight response when it's being triggered?
Yeah. So I have 3 simple steps. I like to keep things super simple, usually in 3s. The first is targets. I didn't have this step when I started coaching in 2010, but I quickly added it because I realized people need to have a reason why they're doing this as their motivator. So for example, if you have ulcers, that could be your target. I want to have a clean stomach. Like, I want to fix this.
Yeah.
It could be a relationship thing. Like, wow, my spouse wants to divorce me. Like, I got to do something here. Or it could be something at work. I want a promotion. I want to make more money. I want to double my income in my business. So there is a target. What are we aiming for?
Yeah.
And I spend some time to really help them develop that. And what's funny is, it's amazing, Armando, within a month or two, those targets just change quickly because they've cleaned things up so fast. So, but we start with something. What are you aiming for? Second step, triggers. What makes you feel these emotions, and any emotion like it? So angry, annoyed, anxious, afraid, and ashamed. Some of those things that we feel ashamed of will be those things that keep us up at night. Or wake up at 2 a.m. and it's like going through our brain like, oh, I should have done this, or I didn't do this, or that person's so upset with me. Or like we're just going through this stuff, right? And so I help my clients identify, could be a time of day that you're triggering, like you hear your alarm. Is it the Power Ranger button? Ring, ring, ring. Is that startling you? That'll trigger the stress response. Are you driving to work or trying to catch a subway and you're late? All of those things are things that will trigger you before you even get into your office or wherever you're going. So we analyze what's making you feel those emotions. It could be something so stupid, like we used to live in this old house. It was beautiful and had a beautiful original door, but it would stick. I go, my violin and groceries, I got to pull the door handle so I can turn the key. I have to put everything down in order to do that. I was triggering before I even got home, subconsciously wondering, am I going to have to fight my door? And then I get to my door and I trigger again if it's sticking. So how many times am I going in and out of this door? So just finding that one trigger cleaned up so much for me. Now I'm going to walk in the door and be so much nicer to my family because the front door didn't fight with me, right? I know it sounds silly, but it's all those little kind of little things, right? And if we can work on some of those, what we call rather innocuous triggers or, so trivial, then when we get to the really hot stuff, the really big stuff, you have created a mechanism in you to prevent the release of the hormones. And that gets to step 3. How do we stop it? Tools and the 10-second solution. So as you mentioned at the top of this, from a resting heart rate, you've got about 10 seconds before 2 mechanisms in your brain are going to start the whole process of a couple of floods of hormones. The first being catecholamines. I call it a cocktail. You're now under the influence. And you're under the influence for hours. So that first flood of hormones, we've got to prevent it. And then the second flood of hormones that people talk about all the time today, cortisol. Don't talk about cortisol unless you're going to talk about the other ones too. Like, don't reduce cortisol. You need those to actually fix your brain cells. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's kind of driving me crazy. It's like, stop canceling cortisol, right? It's a really important hormone, and it actually fixes things. So if you release that first flood, of which part of the cocktail is adrenaline, so it's that adrenaline rush, if you will, that's what we need to prevent. And so let's say you're starting to feel hot about something. You've got 10 seconds before the whole mechanism is going to ramp up your heart rate and tell the adrenal glands to release that cocktail. What can you do in 10 seconds to prevent it? So my tools come in 3 types. I have over 50. Sounds like a ton, but every person I coach, Armando, is different. Like when we were together at Vision Info and I asked you guys, is it headaches and jaw tension and grinding? Or is it your chest? Like, is your chest tightening? Is it hard to breathe? Can you feel your heart racing? Some people don't feel that at all. It's all head, or it's here, or is it gut? You feel like you're going to throw up. You feel really nauseous, or you have to pee all the time. That's a deal too. And that will make you more anxious because like, oh God, I'm going to go on camera. I have to, it's crazy. It's crazy. So we're looking at all those things, and my tools, again, 3 types: body tools, mind tools, life design tools. So I'm happy to share like one of each for you if you like.
Please.
Okay. So body tool, one of the top body tools I teach is to simply relax your ab muscles. So we don't have ribs down here. Our ab muscles serve as body armor. When you feel any sort of attack or anything's coming at you, you're going to tighten your abs, and that's protection. But when you do that, you tell your brain we need to go into fight or flight. So if you just put a hand on your belly and just relax your belly muscles, it instantly tells your brain you're okay. So now you stand a chance to choose your response instead of overreact. You've got a moment, you've got a beat. So relaxing your abs, and if we want to go deeper, if you take your hand and roll it down over to where your abs kind of tuck back in a little bit and relax that spot, your real lower abs, I call that your safety, your power, your love, and your money. If that spot's tight, you're probably missing those 4 things or a few of them. So when you get that super relaxed, you're now empowered from the inside. You look calm, cool, collected, and your brain isn't saying, oh crap, we need to go into fight or flight and protect ourselves. So that's probably one of my best body tools I can give you. Mind tools. I'm gonna give you this mind tool. I call it flip the switch because it's one of my favorites of my clients. It's like there's a light switch on your head, and I want you to imagine you have to keep the lights on. So I want you to take your hand and like throw the switch up. It's like you're throwing the switch up. The reason I'm having you do a motion is because a gross motion, body motion, the moment you do that, especially as an adult, it's one of the only ways an adult brain will instantly open new neural pathways, is a motion you don't usually do. So when you do that, your brain goes, oh, what's going on? And you get to create a new habit instantly. So you can read all these books on habits and people can still fail at changing their habits. But if you actually do a motion that you don't usually do, you'll stand a better chance at changing up that habit of reaction is what we're doing. We're changing habits of reaction. So flip the switch. I smile to keep these little neuropeptides circling in my brain that allow my neurotransmitters of this whole outer brain to still work. And then I used to have people like put in an affirmation, but I changed it to an empowering question. Question like, how can I solve this easily? How can we as a team rock it this year? You know, any sort of question that usually starts with a how can I or what can we, that powers you towards solution. A lot of the questions we ask ourselves pull us down into the muck. Why am I so stupid? Why can't I get this right? Why am I not enough? Like all those questions, like you mentioned, like your clients, like, why am I not enough? Like that's what they'll say. You know, why can't I do this? That's unhelpful. So flipping that question to an empowering question, like, how can I do this? How can I solve it easily? I love to add descriptive words because your brain loves that. So you're flipping the switch with your hand, you're smiling a little bit, and you're moving right into a question that's going to get you where you want to go instead of where you don't want to go. We spend a lot of time where we don't want to be, and we spend a lot of brain space on stuff that doesn't help us.
Why do we do that?
I think it's actually the fight or flight stress response, because I can probably say that I have reduced 80% of the crap in my brain just by not triggering the stress response because I'm not trying to protect myself anymore. Does that make sense? It's like all of those little nitpicky things and complainy things and all that stuff is just because, oh, the dishes aren't done right. Or, right? You know, it's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But that's what we'll spend a lot of brain time on. And I also think people are really comfortable in their mess. You know, the people, when I always have a free call with people at first because I don't take everybody as a client. I only take people that are ready to move. I need people who are ready and willing to say, you know, enough is enough.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like this anymore. And then we soar. Like we have fun. We have a lot of fun. And because stress is a downer subject, so I use a lot of humor. And, you know, a lot of the stuff we trigger over is hilarious. Otherwise we cry, right?
Yeah. No, it's so funny the thing that you mentioned, that people love the act of just being in this space because they're comfortable with just the negativity and you know, and because of the past has always given them crap. So they're like, well, the future's always going to be that way too. Yeah. How do you change someone that thinks that way?
Yeah. God, I get a little emotional here because I'm thinking of some people, you know. On the first time I interact with someone, my purpose in that very first call is to give them this little bit of hope. Just this possibility. Are they open to the possibility? People like to be open generally, but I also do emotion for them. So I have them put their hands together and then open them up like that. I go, are you open to the possibility that in the future, so a little framework is like this. Okay, so in the past, I've been really bad at getting on camera or whatever it is. I'm now open to the possibility that I could actually do that really well. And as you start to use that little framework, but I'll tell you, you know, it's like we need this little bit of hope because there's just a lot of hopelessness today. Like
yeah, there is.
There is, and there's so much competition, and we've been bred to be competitors. And I actually have a tool to counteract that. It's not helpful, because if you fear you might lose, you'll trigger the stress response. Now you're going to underperform. And the other thing that happens is we hold back a little bit, because if we do come on here and do a show like this, and they're like, "Oh crap, I didn't give it my all." We do that on purpose because we have to justify if we didn't do so well.
Yeah.
You know that feeling?
Yeah.
And it's like, so I used to coach middle school track. I'm like, why don't they just give it all on the track? Why do they come to me? "Oh, I could have run faster, Mrs. Ingalls." I'm like, "Oh, why don't they just do it?" They're like, "Oh, this is why." We have to justify, because if we did give our all and we
failed,
we might get kicked out of the tribe, which means death, right? So we can't go there. We have to hold back just a little bit. So I help people. I call it the spirit of contribution. Actually, this is a life design tool. It's a third type of tool right here. I call it the spirit of contribution. Instead of the spirit of competition, can you ask yourself, how can I contribute? I'll give an example of a runner. I had one of the top runners, high school runners in Michigan. His cross-country times had flatlined, so he wasn't getting faster. He was about to give up, and just because he wanted a great college scholarship, and it wasn't happening. His parents asked me if I would work with him. After the first session, he took 38 seconds off his PR. Now, that could be a fluke, except he beat 6 people he never should have beaten. They were all seated ahead of him. So we did the second session. He took another 18 seconds off the new PR, landed a great college scholarship. And then he said, "Oh, I'm going to take the ACT again, because I know now I can use this for test anxiety." And he scored 2 points higher on the ACT, got an even better scholarship. So what I learned from that experience, and the tool that really, a couple tools did it for him, obviously, it wasn't just one, but this idea of contributing. So if I have an athlete, especially like runners, they have to they shake the hands of their competitors on the starting line, right? And I told this kid, I want you to shake that person's hand, look at their eyes, and wish them a great race, and completely mean it. Completely mean it. Because if you don't mean it, you're being disingenuous, and that's a block. So you got to completely mean it. Be completely generous and contribute to you're not just contributing to yourself, contributing to that kid, you're contributing to the race, to your school, to something higher. And so I got him in that mode, and it was just like setting something free.
Wow.
So then I've done it with a lot of other people. The same thing with that executive. It's like, she got the promotion not because she was competing for it. She got the promotion because she was now contributing to the company at a level she never had before. So we don't contribute enough in this society. We try to compete, and we try to fight for what we're trying to do. So I try to move people to be their best, their unique gifts and talents. We're all weird. We're all different, right? Let's just be the way we are.
Yeah.
And really bring it forward. And that's how you can kind of unleash and experience things that you never thought you could even do. And let's use a simple example. I have an 18-year-old now. She couldn't get her driver's license for 2 years because she kept messing up the test anxiety and scared behind the wheel, all of that. We've been working together 2 months. She just got her license, just quickly. And that the anxiety piece is interesting. That's why I don't just work with adults and professionals and C-suite execs. I also work with children too, because it makes me so sad that they're so stuck, especially in anxiety. They even call it my anxiety. And so some of the teens I've worked with, one teen broke it in 2.5 weeks. Unbelievable.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. But when I teach them about their bodies and what's actually happening to the biology of the stress response, they get it. They're like, "Oh, it's these hormones that make me feel like this." I'm like, "Yes. All I have to do is relax my belly when my dad's driving crazy to get me to school on time." Or, whatever the thing is like so cool to watch them just light up. I use some E words like enlightened. I want you to be enlightened about your body so you can fix it.
Yeah.
And I've actually worked with 3 people who've been in prison, 1 white collar crime and 2 violent crimes. And the violent crime guy, he was starting a business. He's a minority in a really white place. And he said, the odds are so against me. And I'm like, throw out the odds. I was the first woman to be accepted to the orchestral conducting program at the University of Michigan. The podium is still one of the last, break the glass ceiling kind of things. Mm-hmm. That was 86 that I did that. And I said, there was 0 chance of me being admitted. 0 chance. And I did it. So let go of the stats. They don't matter. when we got done our work together and I asked him, like, how do you feel now? And he goes, I feel extraordinary. And I thought that was a really cool word. It's like, step into your greatness and just feel extraordinary. And I follow him on LinkedIn and he's just doing so well. Like it's just so cool to see.
Very cool.
Really turn around. So, and that's another thing. Sometimes people come to me because they've had crap happen in their past. They've had stuff happen and they don't want their past to be their future, like you said. And really it's the stress response that keeps us locked in there. And it doesn't need to be that way.
So how do people work with you and how can they work with you?
Yeah. I start my adults out on a 3-month program. It's pretty accelerated. And for most people, that's all we need. So I don't want to be your therapist for 30 years. I want to be your coach and teach this to you. And then you're off and running. I want to be your friend for 30 years. And I do have people that will stay in mastery with me. And then I also have a certification program where I teach people how to teach this to others.
Nice.
Because I really want it to grow all over the world. And so that's exciting. But most people come to me. I do a free session first. We need to see, I need to learn about you and see if this is a good fit for you. And then we do the 3 months. At the end of 3 months, if we feel we need to go longer, that's great. Usually I haven't done anything longer than 18 months of, concentrated work with someone because I've built this method to really get results. And that's what I want to see for people. And then with my students, I abbreviate that program just a little bit and I cut the cost of it too. Sometimes entire families work with me. So I'm working with the adults and the children. I call that a pressure-free family, and that's a pretty cool thing.
Sure.
But yeah, that's what we do. And in that 3 months, we do 9 coaching sessions. And you'll see if you book in my calendar, I have 60-minute slots, but I actually buffer another half hour because I don't want to be that person who says, well, our time is up. I don't want to do that to my clients. So I buffer it. And I typically go over a little. If they have a hard stop, we'll stop, of course. But we do those sessions. I do a couple of other things, too. Like my clients can text me 24/7. Most coaches don't allow that. But I do because if I can help people in the moment, if I'm awake and I see the text come in, I've been here in the city for less than 24 hours. I've had 1, 2, 3, 4 different people text me about. Sometimes it's a win. I just had this amazing thing happen, or I need some help. Can you talk for a few minutes? I actually talked to one of my exec clients for 45 minutes just because he was driving. I was free, so let's do this thing. So I'm very accessible to my clients. And then I've built an online course, and anybody, of course, could do that. But most of my private clients, what I do is after each session, I send out the generic material that matches that so they can always go back and rewatch 3 months from now, a year from now. They can watch videos and go back into the workbook and see, oh, yeah, I forgot about that tool or whatever they need.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you have other people doing this, teaching this, or you're working on that?
Yeah, I'm working on it. My first group of people that I did certify was in 2022, and one of them is going to become my son's wife. So she's a ski coach, and she's getting a psych degree as well now, and she's an amazing skier. So she works with ski racers, and in certification programs, she had done other life coaching certifications and things before, but never really built a business. And I helped her start a business immediately, which is another thing that I do. You don't just learn this method. I want to help you start your coaching business so we can touch people. Or one of mine now
awesome.
He's a nurse in Philadelphia, and he really wants to use speaking as a way. He wants to train other health professionals in the pressure-free method. So he's about to finish up certification with me, and he's already done some speaking. It's really exciting. Also, he really deeply cares about inner city youth. So he's been doing some talks to inner city youth. And
that's amazing.
I know. It's really cool. So, yeah. And then I have another woman. She is a former educator, and she immediately started coaching 2 private clients. And it's just cool to see. I just really want this to spread.
I have no doubt that it will.
Thanks.
So tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, you can go to ElleIngalls.com. That's just my name, ELLE, like the magazine, Ingalls like Little House on the Prairie. And that's how you can find me.
Do you know Little House on the Prairie?
I just awkward laughed on that one.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I remember Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah, pretty much everybody kind of knows the books or the movie, or the show, rather. But yeah, that's how you can find me. And you can also always just go pressure-free living, Google that, and lots of things will come up. I have a YouTube channel with playlists, and you can see trainings and
great.
all kinds. There's a lot of free stuff out there. But the best way, if you're like really serious and you're like, I'm done, like I don't want to do what's happening anymore, or where will you be in 6 months if you don't clean things up? That's the other thing. Then just book a call with me. You'll see the consultation button on there, and I'm happy to talk with you.
Very, very cool. Thank you so much for being here. Elle Ingalls, y'all check her out. I'm telling you, this stuff works. It's incredible. And just the stories and transformations that she's been able to achieve is just extraordinary.
Thanks.
So thanks for being here.
It's great to be here.
And that was Spaghetti on the Wall, brought to you by Leduc Entertainment for all of your digital marketing needs, podcasts, social media, customer journey videos, whatever. We got you. And keep listening. We'll see y'all on the next one.